March 23rd, 2023. Corey Engel, another Talking to Myself video. Last evening I watched a couple of videos of Julia Laffey. She is a journalist that reports on Russia, pretty much an expert on Russia. I believe she grew up in Russia and now lives in the United States. And she gave some real detailed insight into Putin and the way he thinks and ultimately what his plan is. And at first I was thinking that the war in Ukraine was strictly about oil. I still think that has a lot to do with it, but also the fact that Putin is a madman. He never once believed in democracy. He saw the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of communism as a loss, and it's his idea to try to bring the communist state back and to make Russia strong and powerful at the expense of the freedom of its people. So this has me thinking about China, Russia, the United States, and I know that the Chinese, we should probably view them as our enemy, but at the same time, I don't want to just condemn them because they're communist. I have no time for communism. I think freedom, liberty is imperative for all people, but that's up to the people of their country. It's not really up to us. I mean, we took it upon ourselves with our great American Revolution, and we fought for our freedom. We got it, and it's our job as Americans today to make sure that we can hold on to that. Okay, the one thing that I want to talk about Julia Laffey stressing is Putin's mindset and his willingness to use nuclear weapons. The war in Ukraine isn't so much a war between Russia and Ukraine as it is between the Soviet Union and the United States. It just happens to be taking place in Ukraine. It's U.S. weapons that are giving the Ukraine people a fighting chance. And as far as Putin sees it, that's who he's fighting. He's fighting us, the Americans. She did say how he would be willing to use nuclear weapons at the drop of a hat. If he's being backed into a corner, his military, his army is getting their asses handed to him, and the next step is using a nuke. Problem with that is they use a nuke, we're going to use a nuke, and it could be all-out nuclear war. And when I think about my kids, it's terrible because whenever I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, we lived in this constant looming fear of nuclear war, that the Soviets were going to attack us. And the nice thing about the Berlin Wall coming down and the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's like that threat of nuclear war pretty much disappeared. It was actually pretty cool. The Americans and the Russians, still the two biggest guys on the block, but there wasn't the real possibility of us fighting. And now here it is. Like my kids, I don't know how much they're aware of it, but I know it's in the regular mainstream media, the talk of a possible nuclear attack. And I never wanted my children to grow up in this atmosphere. Who does? But anyways, the problem is Putin. How do you get rid of Putin? Any kind of military action is an act of war. And as far as I can see, I was talking about communism earlier, and the Chinese people, the Russian people, they have to take it upon themselves to get rid of their dipshit leaders. And I know it takes a lot of courage, but they have to dig deep. They have to decide what they want. I think a way for us to kind of aid that, and I talked about this before, is for the United States government to reach out to China. And this is where big oil comes into play, and the guys that really control policy making and everything else. The Chinese can make solar panels on the cheap. They can make batteries on the cheap. Strike a deal with them. Say, come on, China, start cranking out the solar panels. We want to buy solar panels for every American home. And, it does two things. It gives the American people the freedom from being under the thumb of big oil, which is now big utility with their dumbass natural gas power plants. Our electric rates are through the roof. Price of gas is stabilized right now here in central PA. We're at about $3.50 a gallon. But all it takes is for them to raise that price, and it crushes our economy. This all ties into inflation. The Fed is full of shit. Raising interest rate, it doesn't do a goddamn thing. The only way to stop inflation is competition. You give a competitor, you allow people the ability to compete against the utilities when they raise the rates on you with solar panels. Use the Chinese, use their manufacturing. It's a win-win for us, right? I mean, it's not about making the Chinese stronger and growing their economy. It's about making our country stronger, our country more independent. Imagine how strong our economy would be and how insulated it would be from inflation if every house produced its own power and you weren't subject to the price increases on a whim from a centralized utility. Think about it, folks. It would work. You'd have our media is open. And if the Chinese people and if the Russian people could somehow see what we're doing over here and how we're making our lives better by getting rid of the centralized utility, the centralized anything, that might give them the cause to stand up and fight for themselves and get these jackass warmongering oil freaks out of Russia and the lunatics out of Asia. I would love to hear other opinions. I know somebody else I've been watching on YouTube lately, Russell Brands. I'm not exactly sure how you say his last name. He was a Hollywood actor, pretty funny guy. I think he's originally from the UK. And right now his channel, it's dedicated to breaking centralized control. He pretty much focuses on centralized control of the media and how they control the narrative. And he's hitting a nail on the head. I wish he would do a deep dive into the centralized control of our economy, and that comes down to big oil and a lack of competition, a lack of an alternative for the American people. And I don't know if his video finds anybody. Please let me know what you think. Take care. Bye.